Now, originally I just intended this to be a filler video, something in between videos, and I intended it to be very short, but it ended up being 50 minutes long, the original recording. So while I do prefer the longer videos because you actually understand the context, the full situation, I intended this to be very simple but very deep. Normally I don't like short videos at all, at least when you're trying to inform people about a certain topic, but I think I discovered the core of the autism awareness ideology. Now, when most people think of it, they think of the ABA, eugenics, and misinformation. In fact, it's fire hosing and dehumanization. Each of those is a very valid reason to hate the autism awareness ideology. However, it's not the core of that. It's not the core of autism awareness. You see, with autism awareness being such a mess of an ideology, I probably had at least 12 questions regarding it. However, I think I found one answer to all of them. Autism awareness is uncultural. For the sake of argument, let's say everyone has to choose one assumption, and they always have a 50-50 chance of being incorrect. Now, if autism awareness were correct, both situations should mean the same thing to you, because at that point, autistic people can't really do much regarding autistic problems. At that point, extinction would basically be inevitable, or not specifically extinction, but the decline of the autistic population. If autistic people try to build society, they will fail in this scenario, but it won't actually hurt anyone. You aren't hurting anyone by merely trying to socialize, merely trying to have friends and family and build a society over time. And of course, autistic people would be unsuccessful, but at least autistic people would have a lot more morale to have more ambition in life, like maybe invent a few more things before going extinct and dying knowing that you made the best of your flawed neurodivergence. But the other two situations are life and death. In one, autistic society, and by implication autistic civilization, is built. Whereas in the other situation, autistic people never even get to build the civilization. And as it relates to autistic people on a personal level, autistic people will be very dehumanized when such was never necessary. Now, quite frankly, I don't even want to entertain the possibility of autism awareness being correct, but even then, the autism awareness narrative doesn't have any merit. There's not much to win or lose, except if you believe something crazy like the anti-vaxxer narrative or the idea that ABA helps autistic people, but at that point, it's so insane that you can debunk it with very simple logic, and everything after that will just be mental gymnastics. But what creates that mental gymnastics? When you no longer have facts and logic, what's left is motivation, and motivation is often influenced or maybe even defined by emotions, or as you could say, feelings. So, in this specific case at least, feelings don't care about your facts. Now, this isn't to go full-on post-truth or say that there is no objective reality, but rather, knowing the wisdoms and knowledge about autistic people, or at least the more basic ones, depends less on the actual facts and more so on what story you tell, and autism awareness tells a very bad story. Now, I say their narrative is bad, as in it doesn't strive for anything good. It doesn't strive for society, it doesn't strive to create an autistic language or civilization, nothing like that. But that doesn't mean it's not an effective story. Autism awareness is so negative that The only real moral there is, the only real worldview is that autistic people bad, getting rid of autistic people, or treating autistic people, quote unquote, is good. This is why autism awareness infests all cultures, is a very international globalist thing, and is seemingly common sense. But it also motivates the most ridiculous things like anti-vaxxerism or whatever the JRC does. Now obviously, they don't care much for autistic people, but they should at least be expected to care for neurotypical people. Notice how they'll berate autistic people, but they won't compare autistic people to neurotypicals or non-autistics. They won't sing the virtues of the non-autistic civilizations. Autism awareness truly strives for nothing, and I don't want to say everyone who believes in the autism awareness narrative is a bad person. Certainly, for most people, it's the only narrative that there is, but the narrative itself doesn't strive for anything. It can only be justified if you really hate autistic people. Now, if there's anything to take away from this, it's that you shouldn't take the autism awareness narrative seriously. Now, there are some exceptions with that. Do try to show your reasoning and logic and evidence to talk to someone that doesn't know any other narrative, that hasn't seen the Autistic Pride narrative, any alternative narrative. But nobody else deserves anything more than straightforward and simple logic and evidence, because everything after that will be mental gymnastics. If they already have the notion of autistic society, then the only thing you could say if they try to rationalize autism awareness is moo, or at least that's the only thing that's really necessary. So like, if they say something like, what about the nonverbals? Say moo. What about theory of mind? Moo. Now don't get me wrong, they represent notions that should be debunked. However, it doesn't change the fact that autistic people should try to make society, and autism awareness is unjustified. What I would do personally would be something along the lines of the following. End the conversation by saying, what civilization can autism awareness ever create? Post a clip or video of autistic people wanting autistic children like this.
In fact, when I was younger, I used to tell my parents that the only way I ever would have kids is if they were autistic. I vividly remember saying to my mum when she asked me, are you gonna have kids? And then I asked her, what's the likelihood that they're going to be autistic? And my mum, thinking that I was worried about having an autistic kid, was like, oh, probably not very likely. I looked her dead in the eye and was like, in that case, no, I don't want them.
Or taking a successful autistic person that you like and captioning them with "mukju." Now, some people may argue that this will get us labeled as anti-intellectuals or pseudo-intellectuals, and that's actually not that bad, almost a feature rather than a bug, because we don't want Autistic Pride to have a conversation with autism awareness, at least not to any significant extent, because it will only make autism awareness stronger and water down autistic ideas. And it's kind of like putting ice on fire. It will only water down autistic pride and make de-internalization of autism awareness a lot harder, which is something we really don't want. It will only make autistic people free to make their own ideas and ideologies and decisions, which is why I'm not even afraid to be 50% wrong, because that would still leave autism awareness at 90% wrong. And even if I was 90% wrong, it would make a good antithesis to autism awareness anyway.